Hello everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you're here, it's because you're here for part 2 of the monumental interview that I did with John Kretschmer. If you haven't seen part 1 already, it's a doozy. We had a really great time and covered a lot of diverse topics. So I'll put the little information thing up here, and you can, up here? One of these corners, and you can check that out before you check this one out. This is the second half where we sort of delve into more of technical discussion about what makes a blue water boat. It's a topic John and I muse on a lot and have discussed ad nauseum. So we've finally done it on camera, and we raised some interesting discussion. The reason this video was delayed for so long was because John very kindly offered to take us on a walkthrough tour of his Kaufman 47 Quetzal, which he has now done and has now provided me with footage, and I have whacked it in the middle of this interview. If you would like to get another John Kretschmer fix, he's presently doing webinars. I'll put the link in the bio, and I'll do that subtitle thing about here. So without further ado, please enjoy the second half of this very vast interview with John Kretschmer. If you could put anything on a billboard above the Miami boat show, or any other boat show that you can picture, above the entrance, what would it say?
That's a great question. So it would say this: if I were God for one day, I would forget about world peace. I would cure seasickness.
John Kretschmer.
John Kretschmer.
Vote John Kretschmer. God.
Right. No more okay, forget it.
No more seasickness.
That's right. But seasickness is such a drag for people.
Oh no, I feel so bad for people who have it.
I know, and if you're not prone to it,
and you just can never, you don't get it at all.
I don't get it, no.
Same.
And so
you just can't empathize.
You can't.
And you try, and they just get more angry at you.
And the more you empathize,
they just get. And you're like, I'm here for you. I know how you feel. You do not know how I feel.
Taji does not want to be. She just wants to be in a bubble.
Yeah, just let me lie down. Let me stare at the ceiling. Give me a ginger nut biscuit and go away.
You know, another thing is that I don't know, I might be tempted to say is that don't believe everything people tell you about your boat. And that there are a lot of boats are pushed off as blue water boats that are not really perfect for that.
Oh man, we're hitting the next packet of questions.
I figured we might be.
So I think we're of like minds there in that maybe it gives you the willies the way that the term blue water is blue water sailing or blue water boat is thrown around sort of very haphazardly. It's perhaps an error.
Yeah.
Do you think it's one of my questions here was do you think that's blue water is a subjective term, or does it have
I like that
definition for you? It's clear.
It does have a definition for me. So blue water to me is when you go off soundings and you enter the realm of when you're on your own. So
off soundings being
deep
very
water.
Eloquently said, the ping does not come back.
Exactly. Yeah. When your depth sounder no longer talks to you. Blue water for me is when you're off soundings. You're headed for deep ocean, and for me, it's weird. I mean, I feel a huge sense of relief when that happens. I had a friend of mine who used to...
That's quite backwards for me, but I'm working on it. Every time I see land, I'm like, oh my God.
Oh man, yeah.
We made it again.
Land is like, oh my God, what a headache. We got to dig out the fenders and all that crap. Get the anchor ready. Yeah. But no, I feel a palpable relief when we're shoving off and we can get into the rhythm of being on the ocean. So, I just come at it from a little different perspective, knowing that when you're in a good boat, a boat that's designed for that. I mean, all sailboats are good boats. Come on, they're one of the greatest of mankind's inventions. But some are friendlier out at sea that allow you to get to that place I was talking about easier, where the boat's ride is nice, where the boat doesn't need to be micromanaged.
So would you... perhaps for the boat shoppers among us, could you maybe give us some of your key criteria for that clearly defined blue water boat, not the subjective one?
Yeah,
your version.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I'm not
and
dissing.
Don't just say Quetzal.
Kaufman
47 is not a sufficient answer.
Hey everybody. Hey Adam and Kiara. Welcome aboard Quetzal. Quetzal is a 1986 Kaufman 47 cutter.
designed by Mike Kaufman, built in Taiwan by Ka-Shing. She's got a great hull shape for blue water sailing. She's a fine entry, a very deep fin keel, a long fin. She flattens out after that, and then there's a full skeg-hung rudder mounted well aft. With the rudder so far aft, she has great steering control off the wind and in big seas. She rarely pounds going upwind. She has low freeboard. She's wet, there's no question about it. But she's sure-footed. She's a really sure-footed boat in a blow, and solidly constructed. And she makes her crew happy. When you're down below on this boat, even in heavy weather, it sounds like you're in the library. She's built like a rock. So in addition to having a hull shape that's meant for the ocean and a boat that's solidly constructed, the equipment choices you make and how you fit it out really make a big difference. And there's certain things I've distilled over the years that I believe are critical for happy voyaging. Sailing starts with sails and sail controls and sail plans. And one thing you cannot skimp on, you just flat out have to have a great, rugged, oversized roller furling system on the head sail. Because the way you actually furl your head sail offshore, especially in breezy conditions, is you just ease the sheet enough to release pressure on the sail, and then you furl it in with a furling line, a strong furling line, like a Dyneema furling line, led to a winch. When it's a 20 knot breeze and a 12-foot sea, the idea that you're just going to bring your boat into the wind and flog the heck out of your head sail while you're trying to furl it, you do that a few times and you realize that's ridiculous. You need to have a very nuanced approach to how you furl the head sail. Ease it out till you just get a little bit of luff, take some in. And that's critical. That's the kind of equipment and sailing strategies that really matter offshore. Another thing I always talk about is you have to have some kind of ability to fly a staysail or a storm sail. And if you can take it off the head stay and take it off the furling gear, that's even better. So a partially furled Genoa is an inadequate and a poor excuse for a storm jib. A lot of people have gone with roller furling on a staysail, and I'm certainly not against that anymore. Furling gear is terrific. I am kind of a minimalist and a traditionalist in some ways. We have a staysail here that is hanked on, bronze hanks on a stainless steel stay, raised with a halyard and controlled with 2 sheets. And it is bulletproof. It's actually also reefable, which is pretty remarkable. I can turn it into from a working staysail, which we sail as a cutter all the time, into a storm jib that would allow me to fore-reach or heave to in really rugged conditions. Think about gear choices like this. They all sound good, but they have complications. You can't just stick a staysail on your deck and put a little backing plate on a U-bolt through the deck as a tack point. It needs to have a really serious chain plate. You could argue that it's the most serious chain plate of all because it's going to carry your storm jib in possibly survival conditions. So that's the deck side of things. We also need to have running backstays if you have any kind of staysail system. And we have these really cool running backstays here. As actually soft stays, this is ducks, sort of super duper Spectra. And they lead to these really nice, handsome Spectra tails that are made up for me by my dear friend Bob Pingle with these beautiful kind of old school whippings and these dead eyes. It's a really awesome combination of high-tech rope and traditional thinking. And it makes for really a fantastic way to have a running backstay without wire clanking around as you're trying to stow it. These are the kinds of things that make blue water sailing they release the stress points in your life. When you can drop down to a deeply reefed main and a staysail or storm jib on a stay that's separate of the furling gear, your life is happy. Secondly, or another, whatever number we're on, you need to think about how you're going to sail downwind. Almost every boat is set up for across the wind sailing. Boats are set up to sail somewhere between 50 and 100 degrees off the wind. Cruising, you're looking for trade winds, you're looking for prevailing winds, you're often deeper than 120, 140, 150. You need a whisker pole. Whisker pole that's easily deployed. This one goes up and down the mast. I can set it myself easily, quickly, safely. It needs to have preventer lines on it so that once it's up, it's in place. and you need to be able to extend it. This one is pretty cool. It's got a carbon fiber sleeve on it. We fly the whisker pole a lot. On a typical transatlantic, the whisker pole goes up on day one and comes down on arrival day, and that might be 14, 16, 18, 20 days later. The pole is a workhorse. It's almost as important as the spar itself. A beefy, strong, good support system for the whisker pole is essential. So naturally, when you sail about 150,000 miles, I mean, it's kind of a crazy amount of miles. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, 5 or 6 trips around the world. You're going to make changes. So when I bought Quetzal in 2003, she was a symphony of teak. She was like a forest. Teak on the coach roof, teak on the side decks, teak everywhere. But the teak just kind of kept wearing out and became uneconomical to consider replacing it. So we took it off and we went with this white deck. We filled the thousands of holes, we re-fiberglassed the deck, and we went with this painted non-skid. And I've really come to like this kind of white utilitarian look. Terrific non-skid. Don't let anybody ever tell you that non-skid's not critical. In all honesty, when you're making your way on the foredeck in a blow, non-skid is more important probably than handholds, and certainly more important than lifelines. Non-skid is essential. So when you're fitting your boat out or looking at your boat, if your non-skid is weak, it's slippery, it's worn, change it, make it aggressive. Probably the second biggest change we've made is adding this hardtop. And honestly, I call it the T-top for the Taji top. It's also the T-top for the Trevor top. My brother-in-law Trevor and Taji conspired to make sure that we built this thing, and it's been a real game changer for us. It's a super cool construction. It's lightweight, high-density foam, just lightly skinned over, polycarbonate windows, and it's attached to the boat like a traditional Dodger on a really robust aluminum frame. It's completely waterproof, but in the event of a full knockdown or rollover or some horrible thing, it would go away without ripping holes into the boat. My design criteria was that it not be laminated. And it's just worked out to be great. You always know where to find Taji when you come up. She's tucked under the Dodger someplace. So to me, the critical factor in choosing a boat, falling in love with a boat, is really how it sails. You can have the greatest interior, the greatest deck, but if the boat doesn't sail well, if it doesn't speak to you, if you and the boat don't just kind of connect sailing, you're going to be disappointed. And that's why I love this boat so much. Quetzal and I have been through some remarkable storms. We've had some of the greatest sailing days in the trade winds you can imagine. We've punched through big time gales. We've forereached and we've just pounded our way home at 25 knots for 4 consecutive days. And we understand each other. I know how this boat's going to sail. We have climbed mountains of water, huge waves, and we have skidded down the face of a 30-foot wave that I'm not sure other boats would have survived. And I can feel her talk to me. I know this sounds silly, and people are going to go, "Oh my God!" But I can feel the way the boat's going to respond. Nowadays, when I'm at the helm, and I always take the helm, I feel the boat in my heels and my knees, and I can get just a momentary warning when something's going to happen. I feel the boat lurch a little bit. I know how to steer off. This big wheel is a pain to get around. There's no doubt about it. But when it's blowing, and when it's blowing hard, and you need leverage at the helm, you need to be able to steer with some vigor. I love this wheel and would never change it. All that being said, steering gets old, especially for couples, and probably, and I always write this and tell people this, that if you have to make one really, really critical equipment choice for world cruising, blue water sailing, you got to think hard about self-steering. Autopilots are amazing today. We carry just a typical Raymarine autopilot, but we have components to have 2 of them. So when one does fail, like it did just on our most recent passage, Taji and I just sailed up from St. Thomas. In fact, we left Adam and Karen in Grenada, and we sailed to St. Thomas, and then we sailed from St. Thomas up here, and the autopilot failed. It wasn't that big a problem for us because we also have this wonderful contraption back here, which we love dearly. It's the Hydrovane wind vane self-steering device. It drives the boat completely independent of any electrical system and in fact independent of the boat steering system. The way it works is you get the boat on course, you balance the sails, you steer, you hold on for a long time, and you actually don't turn the wheel because you see how the hydro vane is steering, and when you're happy with that, you go ahead and throw the wheel brake, lock the rudder, and the vane steers. We had a really, really windy day coming into Beaufort just a few weeks ago. Winds steady at 30 and gusting to about 35, 38. And the autopilot had quit, and the hydro vane steered like a champion. So to me, it's expensive. Everything about boating is expensive, but a really well-found blue water boat has both a steering vane and it has an autopilot. Another advantage of the hydro vane is that this rudder right here, which is now out of the boat, is actually a completely fully rigged independent rudder system. And should you, God forbid, have rudder issues or rudder failure, the hydro vane is a steering system. You can literally use a bilge pump as a steering handle, or just let it steer the way it's meant to steer. Hi. Quetzal has a steep companionway, there's no doubt about it. She's a deep draft boat. Once you're down here though, you feel really secure. The thing about boats is that arguably one of the most overrated things are handholds. Because what you really need in a boat are hip holds. You need to be swung around, you need a place as you move about in rough conditions that you can support yourself. You often have something in your hand. The idea that you're going to be groping for an overhead handrail is ridiculous. You can move about in Quetzal in any kind of condition. You just always have a place to put your hip. Yeah, it's kind of like an old shotgun house, and many modern boats have these spacious interiors. But when it's falling, you need to have a place to put yourself. All right, a seagoing galley is essential in any blue water boat. I have made thousands of meals in this galley for a lot of people. Gimbal stove, deep fiddle edges, a bar to support yourself, able to support myself on either tack. Not really a fan of a galley harness. I'm not sure I like to be strapped in that close to the flame, but that's my choice. Another thing is you need a head that is, if you have one head, that's functional and close to the center line of the boat so that you can use it in any condition. If you have two heads, it really makes sense to have one on each side of the boat so you have a downwind head for either tack. And finally, you need a really good place to sleep. Never underestimate the importance of sleep underway. You know, those beautiful centerline queen bunks on fancy center cockpit boats are lovely when you're in the marina or at anchor, but underway they're borderline useless. You need a place where you don't fall and you can sleep in any condition. Quetzal has these lovely little pilot berths. They've kind of gone out of fashion, but once you sleep in one, you'll never really want to sleep anywhere else on a passage. This is how you climb in. It looks small, but there's plenty of room, and once you're in, you're really secure. These are actually teak coverings of the stainless steel chain plates that come down into this fiberglass thwart that runs fore and aft here. They're unbelievably strong, so you're in this bunk and you are really secure. And you know, with that, it's been nice chatting with everybody. So I'll see you down the road. I think I'm going to take a snooze.
She's been a good old boat, though. This boat has about 150,000 miles on it.
She's a beautiful boat.
It's crazy
She
when you
never
look
looked-
around
she
her.
never looked better. Every
well,
time I see her, she looks better.
That's Taji's doing down here for sure. But I think the boat, the first thing, you know, I've written about it so many times, but the design trumps construction. Mm-hmm. So a really seaworthy kind of entry, a keel that can give you flexibility and allows the boat to track well, and a boat that doesn't just kill you with helm and needing constant micromanagement.
So for those of you who are not familiar with track, that's course over ground as opposed to your heading. So you might be pointing really high and then you give it all back in leeway, whereas if you're making good track, you're not giving back all those windward miles in leeway.
Exactly. And
so you need to, it's one thing to pinch and point on the wind within a bee's dick of the wind and then skid across the surface back downwind and lose it all.
Yeah.
It's quite another to sacrifice 10 degrees of heading but actually make good those miles without giving them back.
Yeah, and it's generally a better point of sale.
I learned that from his book, by the way. Not that clever.
No, but that's yeah. I was thinking, wow, that sounds good.
That sounds really familiar.
It does,
I've heard
wow.
that. Where have I heard that before?
Did I steal that from you? No, and also tracking is really important in big seas downwind. So that's when a boat just really kind of lays into a sea. It doesn't just skid out of control, resist the tendency to broach, and so that whole tracking thing has kind of gone away as a design criteria, and it's pretty important. So how can you tell whether a boat's going to track? It's hard to really know until you sail it, but the hull shape can let you know.
Okay.
Kind of that. It's really easy to get addicted to what you know and get stuck. You like music from the 80s. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, my God. But those hull shapes from the late 70s to early 90s that featured moderate fin keels and even longish fin keels, skeg-hung rudders, lower freeboard, fine entry, kind of a flared section astern to allow the boat to get up on the wave. Those have just proven to be really seaworthy boats. And it's not just that they're your favorites. They've just logged thousands, millions of ocean miles. People sail them around. I mean, your boat is just built to sail around the world. And that's kind of the design sweet spot. And so you don't want to get stuck in that. Modern boats are really interesting, and now they've added twin rudders. And the versions of those that I've sailed have been really kind of a little tweaky to get the hang of.
I understand the performance benefits with the twin rudders, but surely that's almost... I mean, now it's two non-skeg hung hull
things
breaches, things to
yeah.
So
Right.
not only is it a single rudder that's not skeg hung that can get wiped off,
right?
And
two
hull bridges, it's twice that.
Yeah.
So it's twice as good from a steering on a heel angle point of view, but also twice the exposure.
So the ones that I've sailed so far, and I have to sail others, have been the rudders themselves are each so small that they don't deliver kind of the power that one large rudder delivers. So it takes a little nuance to steer them well. And I think also part of that criteria is that, to me, even if you're in a Cape Dory 36, which is meant to heel a lot, the best sailors, the best ocean sailors, take the heel out of their boat.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's where the twin rudder thing kind of... I can see if you're a Volvo 60 or you're going to be in the Vendée Globe and you're going to be just screaming down Southern Ocean waves to have as much control of the ass end as possible. That makes complete sense. But in the normal cruising sense, the vulnerability of two rudders, the lack of a skeg, and the fact that you really don't heel your boat very much. I mean, when you're heeled, it's for a short period of time, but when you're crossing an ocean or doing serious blue water work, you got to take the heel out of the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the marriage saver, really. I mean, if you're going to...
Well, that's right. It's
nobody
a great
enjoys
performance enhancer, but only in a very uncomfortable condition.
That you
it's
don't
kind
really...
of like a symmetrical spinnaker in a sense.
It's
like you're screaming along and having a great time, but you got to manage it all day.
Yeah, for sure.
All day.
And then you micromanage it, and then at night you're
at work
kind of on
all
pins
day
and needles.
for 20 days, and at night you're sweating buckets and you're not sleeping, and is it really worth that half or that maybe day?
Yeah.
A day you might make up in the journey between a poled out jib or just
and the potential Adam, my thinking in like making passages is to have a boat that's fast and capable enough that you can sail it at 80% and feel really good about the world.
Yeah.
And that gives you this 20% of forgiveness, where if things go crazy or you screw up, you've got still a ways to go before things get totally
maxed
out of control.
Yeah.
And believe me, anyone who sails is going, are you kidding? This guy's competitive as hell. And I try to get the boat going, but I like to leave a safety margin in there.
Yeah, I agree. And often, we spoke about this off camera, often that 20%, like a reef or no reef, one reef or no reef.
Right.
We're talking a quarter of a knot. It's trivial.
Takes the pressure out of the helm.
What it buys
autopilot
you
is happy. Yeah.
5, 6, 7 10 knots of leeway between panic and that's a gust.
Yeah.
Is that a problem or not?
Yeah,
if you're already one
and
reef in and it goes from 15 to 25, you're like, I'm still over the mark, but we're not 10 knots over the mark.
Oh, well, that's a really good point, because it's so much easier to go from one reef to two reefs than from no reefs to two reefs. And so it's a natural progression for the boat, and you trim up kind of organically. Okay, we've got one reef in, we're sailing as a cutter, we took in a bit of the head sail, now it's piping, it's 25, 26, 27. You know what, we'd be happier with two reefs, a little bit more of the head sail, and the whole thing has been managed. But if all of a sudden you just went and then we got to put two reefs in, the boat takes a while to get its groove back. Yeah.
You've prompted me for this is a red herring, as I like to call it. So it's and I know you know the answer to this, but I'm more asking. That's loaded. I'm more asking in terms of do you find it's uncommon knowledge? Because I've found perhaps it is uncommon knowledge where I thought perhaps it would be common. Is that not all knots are created equal? The exponential curve of dynamic pressure on the sail is often misunderstood, and so
for sure.
that first reef is much less significant than that second or third.
Completely.
As with regards to dynamic pressure. And I tried to foolishly tried to explain this to my mother-in-law.
Boy, that was a bold
as part of Sailing 101. It might have been Sailing 104. But it occurred to me at the time, but perhaps there's a lot of people out there who don't quite understand the rate of increase of dynamic pressure on the sail with the change in speed of the wind.
Oh, and the loads are so intense. And I think that you don't understand it until you do.
You don't understand it until you get laid down.
Exactly. And I do think that a mistake people make when they set their boats up is I always tell people, if you're dealing with heavy weather, the key thing, the one single important piece of kit you have to have on the boat are good quality sails that you can make small. Yeah. So it's more important than buying a drogue, or it's more important than if you're questionable about your main and it only has two reefs in it, and you're thinking, well, maybe I should buy this, incredible Jordan Series drogue or something. You are so much better off buying a brand spanking new main with three reefs. As a delivery captain, I knew all the strategies for dealing with heavy weather, only to have sail after sail blow out.
What ounce Dacron do you use on your main? Are you a are you a fan of heavy Dacron main?
I am actually. So my sailing, I know my sail gurus in the world have been two people: Peter Grimm, who's a sort of world famous sailmaker, and then a great friend of mine, Bob Pingle, who is able to kind of analyze technical things and make them really accessible to me. So the main is just under 10 ounces.
Oh, so okay. It's pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy. Yeah. But so this is a thing that I really believe in, is that fresh sails, and they're expensive, don't get me wrong, but fresh sails are the difference between good and safe sailing more than anything else on the boat. If your sails are dodgy, all bets are off when you can't heave to, when you can't forereach, when you go to put that third reef in, and that dynamic pressure you're talking about just tears out the kringle, and now you're in kind of Shitsville. And so new sails and really well-designed sails. So the sails are not just big, beefy, heavy things. They're Challenger sailcloth, which is a new kind of combination of great UV protection, but also lower stretch. So they're kind of performance-y oriented sails that still are durable. And I tend to replace them. This sounds weird, but I replace the sails every 20,000 miles.
Which is like 6 months for
you. Yeah, which is a lot. But it's like every couple of years. Wow, so it's crazy how much I spend on sails, but we're putting a lot of miles in.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so, another thing about having good sails is this is like a big thing I talk about, is the idea that you're going to be out at sea in Quetzal or in your boat, and you're going to be on a reach at 25 knots, and it's 25 apparent, and you realize, holy smokes, the winds are suddenly over 30, and we have to get we got to get the third reef or second reef in the main, because now we're going to have to come up a bit. That you're going to come all the way around and come upwind into now a 12-foot sea and just send everything flogging to reef the main is complete madness. So setting your boat up to be able to stay right on that downwind tack and reef the main is really, really, it's one of the most important things you have to learn as a blue water sailor. We just spent 3 days doing it. The guys were...
Would you say, I mean, my boat does that.
Yeah.
I've never really known any different.
So it's interesting with Australians and New Zealanders and South Africans, they kind of understand that's how you reef.
Yeah.
So your part of the world is windy.
Of the mast track?
It's a big function of the mast. It's a little bit technique because, I mean, damage is done by sheets flogging around. And so a solution to that on older boats, there are things you can put in your old track. One of them is called strong track, which is this Teflon roll, and you literally shove it up your mast.
It's like a larger
and it's
track.
super slippery.
Right.
And it comes with its own cars, and the masks, the sail comes down right now.
Yeah.
But that's something to put a lot of thought into, is to how easily the sail goes up and down.
Yeah.
Because you must be able to reef, and you have to have a good enough furling gear, robust furling gear, to be able to reef the headsail off the wind as well.
Yeah.
Because you're just not going to come upwind very successfully in a big sea and a big wind to put reefs in. So people don't, and they get in trouble.
Yes. Which I think we've discussed this in the past, and I suppose it touches on the blue water discussion, perhaps in a slightly right-handed sphere. Cats, with regards to reefing and being having difficulty turning. And perhaps people don't take reefs in time, and they get into trouble. Given the makeup of a monohull and the way that if you really screw it up, or let's say you get a squall on the beam, you're going to either round up or you're going to lie down.
Taking
it's
the
very
pressure
forgiving.
off either way.
You're going to take the pressure off. The gust is you're going to do something, or it's going to blow through, and you're going to stand up.
Yeah. So really,
a cat is just going to take off. Yeah. And maybe lift a hull, maybe pitch pole, maybe do whatever it's going to do, but the superstructure has to absorb that energy, and that's, in my opinion, that's asymptomatic until it's too late. So what's your advice to cat owners that consider their cat blue water?
So, interesting question, because we chartered cats all last summer. We did it in Tahiti for a couple of weeks, Tonga for a few weeks, New Caledonia, and we had a ripping sail from Huahine back to Taha. It's about 30 miles. In the Leeward Islands of Tahiti. And we were in a Katana 47, which is a great cat. So it's a daggerboard cat, built for blue water, really an impressive boat. But I didn't reef the main in time, and it was a 30-mile sail, but we were flying. And there was zero possibility of getting that full batten main with all that forward pressure against the track reefed at all. And there was essentially it would have been felt really freaky to round that baby up. So even leaving the main all the way out until it's up against that aft lower shroud, which isn't that far, we just decided we would surf right back, and we had an exhilarating sail. And the boat tracked nicely with dagger boards, handled really well. But I was thinking, what if this was a building gale? So most blue water cat sailors you talk to, and there are cats all over the world today, and they're crossing oceans, but they are truly of the mantra, they reef early. And I mean, it's just one time you've got to follow that. And they're, and a good sailing cat like an Outremer or a Katana, they're easily driven, so you can get away with reefing early. Okay. And some cats, like Privileges, are set up more like mono-hulls. A lot of them are older ones, are masthead rigs with staysails, and not necessarily a huge full roachy main, but kind of a traditional main that you could sort of muscle a reef into. Okay. If I was taking a cat offshore, I would go away from that cat rig of the full huge roachy main and a fractional head sail. I'd just change that around, because I think the buoyancy and the ability to ride down big waves, cats have a lot going for them, but it's their sail plans that get them in trouble, in my view.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you heave to a cat?
No.
No.
I have never been able to. But so you can ride out storms, really. You ride storms out. So I was in a pretty big blow in an old Fontaine Peugeot Venezia many years ago. We was off Cape Hatteras. It was like 35, 40 knots, and it was 24 hours.
Right.
And the winds got up from the southeast, and then they veered to the northeast against the Gulf Stream. So it got pretty ugly.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was we couldn't get the main under control. We dropped the main. We took just the furling head sail and had about a bed sheet of size out and sheeted it both ways. So it was kind of sheeted flat, dead center. And then we kept the leeward engine running at slow ticks, and we just took the waves at about 20 degrees off.
It's like a cat version of fore-reaching.
It was. And honestly, we were so... I really never felt like the windward hull was going to lift. And we had some pretty good seas. We had pretty good control. It was rough. It was really rough. And the water action between the hulls was crazy. And a bad thing happened. One of the escape hatches popped open and punched. Yeah, we had to make an emergency repair of that. But overall, the boat handled it extremely well. So I think cat sailors are pretty savvy about how they handle strong winds, but they reef early.
I imagine, That's always been my biggest. I mean, they're such beautiful craft, and they're obviously to live aboard.
Yeah, they're friendly to live aboard.
Yeah, but I was under the impression that they just had to run before a storm. That was their only option.
And so they do that well.
You're going to throw a stay, and the mast is coming down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And God knows that has happened. So cats really are great proponents. Most blue water cat sailors love drogues.
Right. So it's still prevalent to run.
To run, yeah. And so they're great. I mean, that Jordan Series drogue, this long series of cone drogues, is just awesome for cats downwind. They can take a lot that way. One of the problems with running before storms is, although winds don't always reflect the exact direction of the storm, they do to some degree, and it prolongs your storm experience. You have to just kind of wait for the storm to get over you. Whereas when you can forereach, you can choose a strategy.
Halving your duration.
Yeah, really, you can sometimes have it, exactly. And it can be really rough, but man, it's nice to know it's going to be 12 hours, not 36 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing what you know, you're obviously not a convert.
I'm not a convert at all.
You're 100%.
Yeah,
mono.
I don't like the motion of cats personally, and I think it's just because I've been doing this my whole life. There's a really weird pitching motion. They definitely don't heel. You can leave that beer up in a real blow, but the pitching motion, I'm not a huge fan of.
I've only ever been spent a decent time on a Lagoon 44, 40, and I kind of agree that the walking, it's like that, not dead into the swell, but on a it's definitely close on the wind. Sort of, you feel this twisting. It's unnerving.
I know there's a lot of water between the hulls, and
like that's attached to that with two beams or some. I can feel it going twisting. I don't like it. All right.
That is a very patient wife.
Thank you for that, John. Kiara's coming. Kiara's like, wrap it up, guys. Honestly, I really, really, really need to wrap it up because I have killed. In this time we've been talking, the laptop has died. This camera has died. This camera has died. This camera has died. This microphone has died.
But we have red wine.
We've broken out the red wine. This is the last functioning camera. I don't even know if there is sound recording right now. So if you got to the end,
3 minutes of battery left in the cell.
Oh my God,
we made it to the end.
We ran you down.
Thank you for that. I hope you took some value from that. Thank you, John.
Adam, my pleasure, man. We love you guys. Yeah. No. Taji was
50-50 chance we'll need to do reshoots.
No problem. When Taji found out you were here, we were coming your way.
She was raging.